Welcome back. Before you read another text, before you check their profile one more time, before you convince yourself they are just busy, stop. Because what you are about to hear will either save you months of confusion or confirm what you already felt in your bones but refused to believe. There is a particular kind of silence that follows the end of a narcissistic relationship. It is not peaceful. It is not closure. It is a silence engineered to keep you suspended, hovering between hope and devastation, unable to move forward because you are still decoding signals that may no longer exist. Here is the question burning through every survivor's mind at 2 a.m., phone in hand, rereading old messages. Is this really over, or is this just another one of their disappearing acts? That question is not weakness. That question is the direct result of years of psychological conditioning designed to keep you uncertain. Narcissists are masters of the almost goodbye. They vanish without closure. They return without explanation. They trained you to interpret their absence as temporary, because a permanent exit removes your attention from their orbit forever. And attention, for a narcissist, is oxygen. But today, we are cutting through the conditioning. Today, we are handing you a psychological framework so precise, so clinically grounded, that by the end of this video you will know, with absolute certainty, whether the narcissist in your life is gone for good or simply waiting in the shadows for the right moment to return. This is not about hoping they come back. This is not about dreading it either. This is about knowing. Because survivors of narcissistic abuse deserve the one thing the relationship never gave them, a clear, unambiguous, psychologically honest truth they can build their next chapter on. What you are about to discover are 10 specific behaviors, 10 things narcissists always do when they intend to return. When those 10 things are absent, completely, consistently absent, the psychological evidence is overwhelming. They are not coming back. And understanding why will change everything. Pay careful attention, because these signals are subtle. The narcissist does not announce their permanent departure any more than they announce their manipulation. The exit is encoded in absence, in what they stop doing, stop performing, stop maintaining. The silence has a specific shape. Today, you learn to read it. Understanding this will not just give you answers about them. It will give you something far more valuable, clarity about yourself. About how long you have been waiting. About what that waiting has cost you. About what becomes possible the moment you accept that this particular chapter has reached its final page. Stay with me through every word of this, because we are not just analyzing a narcissist's exit strategy today. We are dismantling the invisible psychological chain that kept you checking, waiting, and hoping long after the relationship ended. By the time we reach the final paragraph, that chain will be broken. To understand why these 10 signals matter, you must first understand the narcissist's fundamental relationship with abandonment. Beneath every grandiose performance, beneath every calculated cruelty, lives a deep, primal terror of being discarded. This terror drives everything, including how they manage their exits. A narcissist never fully closes a door they believe they may want to reopen. This is not emotional ambivalence. This is strategic resource management. You were a source of narcissistic supply, validation, emotional energy, reactions, attention. Permanently closing access to a supply source contradicts every survival instinct they operate from. This is why the narcissist's typical departure is never clean. They leave breadcrumbs. A like on an old photo. A vague message sent at midnight. A mutual friend casually mentioning their name. These are not accidents. These are maintenance pings, small signals designed to keep the supply line technically open without requiring full re-engagement. The 10 behaviors we are about to examine are precisely those maintenance pings. They are the narcissist's unconscious, and sometimes deeply calculated, system for keeping former sources of supply tethered. When these behaviors disappear entirely, it means the narcissist has made an internal calculation. This supply source is no longer worth maintaining. That calculation is cold, clinical, devoid of the emotional weight you attach to the relationship. Because here is the brutal psychological truth. The narcissist was never in the relationship the way you were. You were investing in a person. They were managing a resource. When the resource no longer serves the portfolio, it is simply removed from active consideration. Understanding this reframes the entire question. You have been asking, Why did they leave? The more accurate question, the one that leads to genuine clarity, is, why did they stop maintaining the exit route they always kept open? The answer to that question reveals not just their departure but their entire psychological architecture. Narcissists maintain supply lines the way empires maintain trade routes, constantly, strategically, and only as long as the route remains profitable. The moment the route becomes unprofitable, the moment you stop reacting, stop engaging, stop providing emotional fuel, the maintenance stops. And that cessation is permanent. There is also a secondary factor that accelerates permanent departure: new supply. When a narcissist acquires a robust new source of narcissistic supply, the psychological bandwidth they previously allocated to managing your connection is fully redirected. You do not disappear from their awareness entirely. You simply become irrelevant to their current operational needs. This is not about you being unworthy. This is about them being incapable of genuine attachment. A person who cannot form authentic bonds cannot experience authentic loss. What looks like indifference from the outside is actually the narcissist's baseline emotional state, which they concealed from you throughout the entire relationship using performance, not feeling. So now, armed with this psychological framework, we examine the 10 behaviors. Each one is a thread in the web the narcissist maintains around former sources of supply. When all 10 threads go dark simultaneously, when none of these behaviors appear across weeks and then months, the psychological verdict is clear, final, and liberating. Signal 1. They stop monitoring your social media entirely. The narcissist who intends to return always watches, views your stories, checks your profile, tracks your movements from a distance. When that surveillance ends completely, no views, no subtle traces of their digital presence, the psychological investment has been withdrawn. Signal 2. They stop sending indirect messages through your shared network. The narcissist who plans to return plants seeds through mutual connections. They mention you casually. They ask about you indirectly. They ensure their name reaches your ears through other people. When the mutual network goes completely silent about them, they have stopped tending that garden. Signal 3. They stop reacting to your pain. The narcissist who intends to re-enter your life monitors your emotional state carefully. They know your vulnerabilities. When you are visibly struggling, the returning narcissist surfaces, offering comfort as a re-entry strategy. If your hardest moments pass in complete silence from them, re-entry is not being planned. Signal 4. They stop the intermittent contact entirely. The midnight text. The random memory shared after weeks of silence. The out-of-nowhere question that seems casual but is designed to provoke a response. Intermittent contact is the narcissist's most powerful re-engagement tool. When it stops completely, the tool has been put down permanently. Signal 5. They stop defending themselves about you publicly. The narcissist who fears your narrative will damage them continues managing your perception in social circles. They counter-story. They subtly discredit. They manage the public version of events. When they stop entirely, when they no longer feel compelled to control how you are perceived in relation to them, they have emotionally exited your shared world. Signal 6. They return gifts, belongings, or finalize shared obligations without prompting. This is a deeply significant behavioral signal. Narcissists keep shared logistics deliberately unresolved because unresolved logistics require contact. When they proactively resolve every shared obligation, without being asked, without leveraging it, the psychological door has been not just closed but sealed. Signal 7. They stop triangulating you with their new relationship. The narcissist who wants you watching and reacting ensures you are aware of their new partner. They make their new happiness visible, because your jealousy is supply. When they completely shield their new relationship from your awareness, they no longer need your emotional reaction to fuel it. Signal 8. They stop responding to provocations that previously guaranteed a reaction. You know their triggers. They know yours. A narcissist maintaining a supply line will always react to certain provocations, because reaction means engagement, and engagement means connection. When those triggers produce absolute silence, the connection has been psychologically terminated on their end. Signal 9. They stop showing up in spaces they know you inhabit. The narcissist who intends to return engineers proximity. They appear at locations, events, or social contexts where encountering you is statistically likely. When they begin systematically avoiding your spaces, not awkwardly, but completely, the encounter they are avoiding is one they no longer seek. Signal 10, and this is the one that confirms everything, they stop performing for your awareness entirely. No achievements announced where you will hear them. No success stories filtering back through the network. The narcissist who is truly gone has redirected their performance to an entirely new audience. You are no longer in the theater they are performing for. And that absence of performance is the loudest, most final signal of all. Now here is where we must speak about what this recognition costs you emotionally, because acknowledging these signals as confirmation of permanent departure is not simply intellectual. It lands in the body like a verdict. And that verdict, even when it is what you consciously wanted, carries a grief that demands to be honored. The collapse is not theirs in this chapter. It is yours, and it is necessary. Because the hope you were carrying, however painful, was also a companion. It was something to hold in the dark. The moment you accept that the 10 signals are present and permanent, that hope dissolves. And what remains is raw, unmediated reality. This grief is complicated by the nature of narcissistic relationships. You are not just grieving the person, you are grieving the version of them you believed in. The version they showed you during love bombing. The potential you saw and spent years trying to resurrect. That version never existed. And grieving a ghost is one of the most disorienting human experiences possible. There is also anger in this chapter. Anger at the years spent decoding ambiguous signals. Anger at the intermittent contact that reset your healing every time it arrived. Anger at a dynamic that was designed, structurally, psychologically designed, to keep you in a permanent state of almost knowing but never quite certain. That anger is valid. That anger is information. Do not suppress it. Here is the harsh truth that this chapter requires. The narcissist did not leave because something was wrong with you. They left, permanently, this time, because the dynamic stopped serving their needs. You may have healed enough that you stopped providing reactive supply. You may have drawn boundaries that made extraction too costly. Your growth may have made you, to a narcissist, unprofitable. That is not rejection. That is graduation. The social consequence of their permanent departure often creates a vacuum in shared community spaces. People who were mutual connections must now be navigated independently. Spaces that held shared memories must be reclaimed individually. This reconstruction of social and physical territory is exhausting, and it is also deeply necessary for the formation of a life that is genuinely, completely your own. There is also a cognitive consequence to accepting permanent closure, the end of the story building the mind engaged in during uncertainty. While you were uncertain, your mind was constructing possible futures, running scenarios, maintaining contingency plans. With certainty comes the requirement to stop building those stories. That mental quiet, initially, feels like loss. With time, it becomes liberation. The darkest moment in this chapter is the recognition of how much of yourself you restructured around their potential return. Decisions you delayed. Opportunities you kept provisional. Connections you kept at arm's length because part of you was still saving room for someone who had already, in every behavioral sense, moved permanently on. That recognition is heavy. It is also the beginning of reclamation. Do not rush this chapter. Do not demand that the grief resolve quickly because you intellectually understand the psychology. The heart does not process through frameworks. It processes through time, through expression, through the patient, non-linear work of feeling what was real, even inside a relationship that was largely constructed from illusion. Your feelings were real. Honor them fully. And then, when the grief has moved through you with the thoroughness it requires, prepare yourself for what arrives on the other side. Because the consequence of this collapse, navigated with honesty and courage, is not more emptiness. It is something you may have forgotten was still available to you. It is the beginning of a life built entirely, unapologetically, around who you actually are. Here is the final truth this entire video was always moving toward. The narcissist being gone for good is not the ending of your story. It is the ending of their chapter in it. And there is an enormous, crucial difference between those two things that will determine everything about what your life becomes from this moment forward. Their permanent departure is not proof that you were not enough. It is proof that you were too much, too aware, too resilient, too psychologically substantial to remain a manageable, controllable source of supply indefinitely. The very qualities that made you vulnerable to them at the beginning are the qualities that ultimately made you incompatible with their long-term needs. The 10 signals you now recognize are not just a diagnostic tool. They are a gift, the gift of certainty in a relationship that weaponized uncertainty from the very first day. For perhaps the first time in the entire dynamic, you have been handed something clear. Something unambiguous. Something you can stand on without fear of the ground shifting beneath you. Begin, now, the work of building forward. Not in spite of what happened, but informed by it. The self-knowledge you gained inside that relationship, about your patterns, your needs, your extraordinary capacity for loyalty and feeling, that knowledge does not belong to the pain that produced it. It belongs to you. It is yours to carry into every healthy relationship that awaits you. The people who survive narcissistic relationships and do the genuine work of healing do not emerge damaged beyond repair. They emerge with a refined, precise, almost supernatural ability to recognize authenticity, to distinguish between people who are genuinely safe and people who are performing safety. That discernment is rare. That discernment is powerful. That discernment was forged in your specific fire. To every person watching this who received the 10 signals and felt the weight of that confirmation, you are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to feel the full, complex, contradictory reality of being relieved and heartbroken simultaneously. All of that is true. All of that is human. All of that is part of the honest passage from where you were to where you are going. The waiting is over now. The checking can stop. The 2 a.m. message decoding, the hope inventory, the constant scanning of ambiguous signals for meaning, you can set all of that down. Not because you are giving up, but because you finally have what you needed to move, certainty. And certainty, after years of manufactured confusion, is the most radical form of freedom available to you. Your nervous system will take time to believe that the uncertainty is finished. Old patterns will surface. The instinct to check, to monitor, to prepare for their return, will arise and will feel urgent and real. When it does, return to these 10 signals. Return to this framework. Return to the part of yourself that now knows the difference between someone who is gone and someone who is just hiding. The narcissist moved on to their next source of supply. That is what they do. That is all they can do. But you have the extraordinary capacity to do something they will never be capable of, to learn, to grow, to genuinely transform. Your next chapter is not a recycled version of your last one. It is something entirely new, written by someone who finally knows their own value with a certainty no one can remove. The narcissist being gone for good is not your loss. It is your release. And the life waiting on the other side of this grief, the authentic, reciprocal, deeply felt life that was always meant for someone with your capacity to love, that life does not begin when someone worthy finally arrives. It begins the moment you decide you are no longer willing to wait for someone unworthy to leave.